Hello, good afternoon, and thanks very much for joining me for my second Friday rant. Last week we had a chat about sport and business, and I had intended to continue that this week, as you probably know, if you tuned in last week. But a friend of mine sent me something this morning that, honest to goodness, it made me really mad. So I just wanted to come on and talk about that. And the issue is that there are a number of oil companies and gas companies, fossil fuel companies. Two of them are British, who are now in the process of suing the British and other Canadian, etc., governments for having climate change policies because they think it's going to damage their revenue. See, when I read it, I nearly jumped. Honestly, I've got some coffee now, so I'm slightly calmer than I was. But when I read it, I thought, you've got to be joking. And there's a number of reasons for it. There's ethical reasons for it. But there's also a historical reason for it, that it would make a Scotsman in particular make his blood boil. So, but I'll show you the video because it's only 2 minutes long. So bear with me. I'll show you that. I've never actually used the screen share thing on Restream before, so this is the first for me. But let me know what you think. What's your gut reaction to it? Because what I'm trying to do with these fire talks is not get into a Barney, not get angry. But this has actually made me angry, and I probably need to calm down a little bit and think about it. But anyway, let me play this little video. It's only 2 minutes long, and it's pretty telling in terms of. Well, I think it's pretty telling.
Fossil fuel companies are suing governments across the world for more than $18 billion for taking action against climate change that threaten their profits, according to research conducted by campaign group Global Justice Now and provided exclusively to Sky News. TC Energy, RWE, Uniper, Rockhopper and Ascent are using a legal process that allows commercial entities to sue governments under international laws governing trade agreements and treaties. The $18 billion they are collectively suing for is almost a quarter of the entire climate funding provided by developed nations to developing ones. That's according to a recent assessment by the OECD, which put the figure at $78.9 billion. So what are these lawsuits? Rockhopper is currently suing the Italian government for $325 million in a dispute related to a ban on offshore oil drilling close to the coastline. Ascent is asking for $118 million from Slovenia after it passed legislation requiring environmental assessments for fracking. Keystone XL pipeline company TC Energy is suing the US government for $15 billion after it cancelled the project, calling it inconsistent with the administration's climate imperatives. Meanwhile, RWE and Uniper are suing the Dutch government for $1.6 billion and $1 billion each, following the Dutch government's move to phase out coal and shut down coal-fired power plants. The majority of the cases are being brought under the Energy Charter Treaty and are being hosted within the International Centre for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, a branch of the World Bank. Sky News has contacted all 5 companies who say their court actions are simply to protect themselves from the effects of the changing energy investment landscape. But climate change campaigners say that energy companies are responsible for harming the environment and should be paying to fix it, rather than suing governments.
I mean, Raymond's just said, just checking the calendar, it's not the 1st of April. I mean, I don't swear on LinkedIn, and I'm not going to swear, but ridiculous. The chief executives of those companies, and this is really a terrible thing to say, but particularly those British companies, what the hell are they doing? Now, you could say what they're doing is they're just using the legal environment that they're operating within, therefore they're not doing anything wrong. Well, get lost. Ethically, where are you? Not impressed. And I mean, it's so annoying because I mean, just yesterday I was posting about legacy systems. Now, what I mean by that is we have a government that's out of date. We have big companies that are out of date. And what I was posting about was, let's just get rid of them. let's have a new government. Let's have start-up countries. Let's have start-up cities. Let's have start-up civil communities, because it doesn't matter if we reform these people or we legislate against these people or we do whatever. This sort of thing happens. It is un-effing believable. God, and as I said earlier, the reason that it particularly gets to me, and I know my friend Andy's watching, and him and I have spoken about this. Back in the 1800s, when they were abolishing slavery in Scotland and England, the government paid compensation to the bloody slave owners because they were losing business. It was an enormous. I've got a picture here. It's quite good. It was something like 20. Wait a minute, let me get this right, because it was £20 million, which is absolutely phenomenal, and it was so much money. We have literally only just started in the last few months. Sorry, last few years, we have just paid off that debt for paying the slave owners compensation because they weren't allowed to use the slaves anymore, the poor wee souls. Now, that means, if you think about it, generations of slaves and slaves' children who live in the United Kingdom and Scotland have been paying taxes for the people who they were actually enslaved to for the last 250 years. I mean, it beggars belief, and most folk don't know this. It is utterly ridiculous. And here we have a situation where the world is clearly got a problem. One of the biggest problems in the world is climate change, and these numpties are trying to get $13 billion worth of compensation in governments across the world. Well, go and get lost. Go and get lost, and you're just proving what I said yesterday about the need to take away these legacy organizations, these legacy structures, and these legacy laws across the world. It's time to go in the cloud, guys. It really is. I've had enough of it. This is the first time I've ranted on a camera for ages. You know, I used to do it all the time on my blog. Right, calm down. I'll see what anybody's saying here. I hope the volume's better. At least it's okay with my voice. I know it wasn't great with the sharing the screen. Never done it before, so I'll have to work out how to make the volume better next time. So if you have any questions or thoughts on it, let me know. I am very tempted to write to the chief executive of these two UK companies, because I'd love them to come on. Honestly, I would love it for them to come on to this and have a chat with me and how they justify the fact that they are claiming compensation because of climate change. Honestly, I would love them to come on. And I've seen it before. I've seen this when I was working in HR. I remember chief executives saying to me, we need to make these people redundant. And when I said why, it was usually because they had a harebrained idea that they wanted to start something up in the business, or maybe they were struggling with budgets, and that is a different thing, and there are different justifications. But I remember the way they used to get us to manipulate the employment law to make sure that it looked like we were doing it right, but they really didn't care. Not all chief execs are like that, incidentally, but some are. And some managers are like that. So this is just another case of, you know, working, as long as we're working within the law, or the spirit of, that's the other one I really like, the spirit of the law, then we're okay. Well, as I said earlier, get lost. Proper Glasgow accent coming out a little bit here today as well. So I don't think you would have enjoyed that, but I hope it's tweaked your interest in keeping an eye on some of these corporates and governments. This is also government. It's not like we cranky in Scotland's any better, or bonkers Boris is any better down in Westminster. They're all at it in terms of manipulating the law, and this is just another classic example. And even if it goes to the courts, it's going to cost you and I cash. It's costing you and I cash to stop our great grandchildren from dying because the climate's knackered. I mean, it's going to cost us enough cash anyway to change the whole society, but this is even more because of manipulation of the law. And you know what happened with the slave money? This is the bit that most Scots that understand this, it does rile them. There are huge swathes of Scotland that are in the ownership of hoity-toity types, and those hoity-toity types were the ones that received the payments from the government in compensation for losing their slave labour. And they got embarrassed. So what they tried to do was rather than keeping hold of the money, they bought large swathes of land all over the United Kingdom. And of course, back then, Scotland wasn't as populated as it is now. So they went up to Scotland and said, oh, I'll have Skye and I'll have Benbecular and I'll have bits of Sutherland. That's where those landowners got that land from. Now, I'm not having a go at the current landowners. It's not their fault. It's a legacy. But nevertheless, that's why so much of Scotland is in private ownership. It's because these idiots in government paid these mega idiots that had the slaves. And here we are once again. So anyway, that was a bit of a rant. Next week, we'll probably come back to the sport and business. It makes this, is sport and business, is sport helpful for business? It makes it seem quite trivial, doesn't it? It sort of puts it into that sort of, yeah, it's quite interesting box. But compared to this nonsense, I'm getting some feedback from Andy saying, not like you to be so ranty. I'm not usually so ranty on this, mate. But it really has annoyed me. And I think it's the historical part. And it was Andy that made me aware of the Scottish slave issue initially. And there's a show, if you're interested in knowing more about it, there's a fantastic podcast called Scotland Outdoors, and they had a whole program about that debacle that happened in Scotland back 250 years ago. It's so depressing. So anyway, I'm going to go, and I'm probably going to go and lie down in a dark room because it's really annoyed me. Now, if you think I've got it wrong, I will change my mind, right? If you send me something that, Scott, you got completely wrong, I will change my mind, right? Because I think it's important for me to say that, because when I get ranty, I can get really ranty. I know what I'm like, but I do change my mind when I'm persuaded to look another way. So if you think I'm talking BS and you think that this is okay for these oil companies to be claiming, these oil companies that have got a sort of diabetes caused by eating the sweet money they've been making for the last 50 years, often off the Scottish shores, and they're now so ill with their diabetes, they don't know what to do with themselves. They're really panicking because they're going to lose it all. If you feel sorry for them, or you even better, and I mean, who would come on? I mean, who would really come on and have a go and have a chat with me about this? I would love it if they did. And I would love to change my mind, but I'm not seeing it, guys. So anyway, that's it. Tonight's live is a music live with Glasgow Polo, and I know there's a few of you on. Thanks for joining us, guys. We're back with the Glasgow Polo thing tonight, 9:30. Lots going on. Next week on Tuesday at 11:30, I've got show 49 of Artifact Live, where we're looking at post-traumatic development, post-traumatic growth, with a very interesting fella called Chris Greer, who fell very ill and was confined to a wheelchair for some time, and told basically he was never going to get better, but he got better. So we're going to talk about that. And I've just had a conversation about my next show with a very, very interesting person who is looking at how it's a bit like my archaeology thing about, we should all be archaeologists of our own lives. And she's actually set up a whole industry around that idea. She doesn't use those words, but she's really come up with a quite wonderful idea. So it's going to be quite practical, linked to the other stuff I talk about with storytelling. So thanks for tuning in. I'm not going to apologize for ranting. I quite enjoyed ranting, actually. I'll see you next week. Probably back to sport, unless there's something else in the media that winds me up. I doubt if it's going to be as windy uppy as that. Anyway, my name is Scott MacArthur. Thanks very much for tuning in to Fire Talk Friday. Oh dear.